before you had a name, before anyone told you what was real or what was possible. You were already immersed in a system far more intelligent than you could imagine. Not a program made of wires and circuits, but an ancient living interface that pulses beneath everything you see, touch, think, and feel. A field of memory, a network of intention, a code that was never meant to be written in ink, but in emotion, vibration, and awareness. This code has a name, not one you learned in school, not one your society wants you to remember. The Akashic Field. You don't need to believe in mysticism to know that there's more to reality than meets the eye. You felt it. The déjà vu that stops you mid-step. The dream that lingers like a message. The moment you just knew something without knowing how. These aren't accidents. They are echoes, signals, invitations. They are the field reaching out to you, trying to be seen, trying to be heard, try to remind you that you're not just living in the world, you're participating in its architecture. You were taught to live on the surface, to chase goals, secure titles, fit into boxes, and follow rules written by people who forgot their own soul script. But something inside you has always resisted that narrative. Something wild, ancient, honest, a whisper that says, there's more, and there is. So much more. This audiobook isn't a spiritual pep talk. It's not here to sell you on magical thinking or empty affirmations. It's a transmission, delivered to the part of you that already knows but has simply forgotten. In the pages ahead, you won't be told what to believe. You'll be shown how to remember. You'll discover that the Akashic Field isn't a fantasy. It's not mythology. It's the subtle architecture of reality itself. An invisible operating system that stores not only your past, but every version of your potential future. It doesn't care about who you pretend to be. It responds only to the frequency you carry, the truth you embody, the signal you consistently broadcast. And that truth, it's stored deep within you, not in your memories, but in your signature. The same field that recorded every forgotten dream and every unfelt emotion is the same field that's waiting right now for you to tune back in. It's waiting for the one thing only you can provide, alignment. Because once your thoughts, your emotions, and your identity begin to hum at the same frequency, something opens. Reality shifts. Paths unfold. The future rearranges itself to match the signal you're finally ready to send. This isn't magic. It's resonance. This isn't a promise. It's a system, and you've always been inside it. Throughout this journey, you'll learn how to decode your personal energetic signature, clear the loops and blocks that keep you stuck, reclaim power from suppressed emotions and ancestral scripts, shift timelines through emotional coherence, not effort, manifest without force by becoming a match for what you desire. And more than anything else, you'll begin to understand that you were never here to simply react to life. You are here to write it. You're the interface. So pause, breathe, let everything you thought you knew about how reality works begin to dissolve. Because by the end of this experience, you won't just understand the code. You'll remember that you are the code. Chapter 1, the Akashic Field, the living memory of the universe. You have always sensed it, even if you couldn't name it. A presence behind the visible, a rhythm beneath the chaos, a subtle intelligence woven into the background of your life, whispering in the pauses between your thoughts. It's not God in the traditional sense, not fate, not destiny, not coincidence. It is older than language, wider than time, and more intimate than your own breath. This is the Akashic Field. For thousands of years, mystics and sages across cultures have spoken of an invisible thread that connects all things, a fabric of memory, meaning, and potential that stretches beyond the limits of physical space and linear time. The Vedic seers called it Akasha, the primordial ether from which all elements emerge. In Western mysticism, it was known as the Book of Life. In quantum physics, it appears as the unified field, or what some call the zero-point field, a reservoir of all that was is and could be stored not as data, but as vibration. You don't need to be a mystic or a scientist to feel it. You felt it when you entered a room and something shifted in your chest before a word was spoken. You felt it when a thought struck like lightning and an answer appeared before the question fully formed. You felt it in grief, in awe, in the moments you lost yourself and became everything. That's not intuition. That's access. The Akashic Field isn't something out there. It is not reserved for monks on mountaintops or esoteric initiates in hidden temples. It surrounds you, moves through you. You are inside it, and it is inside you. And here's the truth no one taught you. The Akashic Field is not passive. It doesn't just hold memory. It listens. It mirrors. It responds. Every thought you think, every emotion you hold, every identity you embody becomes an instruction to the field. Not in words, but in frequency. The field doesn't need to hear your voice. It hears your vibration. And vibration doesn't lie. It doesn't respond to what you say you want. It responds to what you actually believe, what you expect, what you are. This is not spiritual theory. This is resonant architecture, a living system in which every signal you send returns a reflection, not because the universe is testing you, but because it is coded to reflect coherence. Now pause and ask yourself, what am I broadcasting? Because while you may think you're asking for peace, the field hears anxiety. You may say you want love, but your signal is still vibrating in abandonment. You may be visualizing abundance, but the emotional current running beneath it is lack. And the field? It doesn't judge. It doesn't moralize. It simply reflects. That reflection is the version of reality you live in right now. This is what the mystics tried to protect. This is what science is just beginning to articulate. Reality is not fixed. It is not singular. It is a feedback loop, a living mirror responding to the signal you emit at the level of vibration, emotion, memory, and belief. Every word you've spoken in silence. Every desire you suppressed to be accepted. Every choice you didn't make out of fear. The field remembers. Not to punish you, not to bind you, but because in this system, nothing is lost, only waiting to be retrieved. You've mistaken your past as over, but in the Akashic Field, past and future vibrate side by side, like overlapping frequencies in a cosmic radio dial. The heartbreak that shaped you, the betrayal you never voiced, the moment you could have leaped but froze instead. These aren't events. They are frequencies still pulsing in the field. And unless they are cleared, they continue to color the version of life you're capable of accessing. That's why you keep attracting the same kinds of people, the same situations, the same emotional loops. Not because you're broken, because the signal hasn't changed. You don't need to fix yourself. You need to clean the code. You need to tune the instrument of your being until it stops broadcasting the echo of your trauma and starts emitting the truth of your power. To live in alignment with the Akashic Field is not to master complexity. It is to remember simplicity, the kind of knowing that doesn't come from thinking, but from being, a knowing that bypasses intellect and lands directly in the body, like a truth you've never spoken but have always carried. You're not here to learn the field. You're here to recognize that you've never been disconnected from it. The interface was never missing. It was only clouded by noise. Noise that came from culture, from conditioning, from identities you built for safety and forgot how to shed. But underneath all that is your signal. Original, unedited. The part of you that never stopped broadcasting, even when you stopped listening. When you were a child, you heard the field clearly. You felt it in your body when someone entered the room before they said a word. You knew when something was wrong, even if the adults denied it. You dreamed with color and memory and codes that spoke in symbols your waking mind couldn't translate, but your soul remembered with ease. You were fluent in frequency. Then the world taught you how to forget. You were trained to think instead of feel, to explain instead of know, to ask for permission instead of trust your pulse. But the Akashic Field never forgot you. And now here you are, hearing the call, feeling the pull, not to become someone new, but to become someone true, to stop outsourcing your knowing to experts and systems, to stop bowing to the gods of logic, strategy, and endless hustle, to stop performing identities that keep you acceptable but unrecognizable to yourself. The field doesn't want a polished version of you. It wants the honest one, because honesty is clarity, and clarity is coherence, and coherence is the key to access. This is why no amount of pretending can hack the system. You can't fake a signal. You can't say one thing and vibrate another. You can't convince the field you're ready for peace while embodying chaos. You can't demand truth while living inside a lie. But here's the liberation in all of this. You're not fixed. Your frequency isn't final. Your story isn't sealed. In the Akashic Field, nothing is permanent. Everything is potential. Every signature you hold is editable. Every pattern is programmable. Every limitation is simply a loop awaiting a new input. Reality isn't happening to you. It's happening through you. The question is no longer whether you can access the field. The question is whether you're willing to take full responsibility for the signal you're sending into it. Because when you do, when you finally stop waiting to be chosen, saved, or proven worthy, everything starts to respond differently. Synchronicities accelerate. People shift. Opportunities align. And clarity begins to flood in where confusion once lived. Not because the universe has suddenly favored you, but because you finally remembered how to interface with it. You've entered a system that never turned off. One that was recording your truth long before you learned how to hide it. And now you're being invited back into the original agreement. The one before the programming, before the shame, before the forgetting. An agreement not to follow the script, but to write it. You were never meant to survive your life. You were designed to shape it. And the field is listening. It has always been listening. Now that you're learning to speak in its language, through emotion, presence, alignment, it will begin to answer in kind. Not with words, with movement, with mirrors, with timelines you didn't even know were waiting for you. This is the architecture of reality. This is the living code beneath your story. And this is only the beginning. Because once you learn how to feel the field, you'll realize something breathtaking. You were never meant to live from memory. You were meant to live from code. And that code is ready to be rewritten. Chapter 2. You are the code. Frequency as identity. You're not your name. You're not your age, your job title, or your past. You're not your trauma. You are not even your thoughts. These are layers, temporary, shifting, and often borrowed. But beneath those layers, something constant pulses. A pattern, a signal, a living vibration that the Akashic Field reads not as a story, but as a signature. That signature is who you are at the level the universe understands. Not what you say you are, what you vibrate as. And that is where everything begins. You've been taught to shape your reality with effort, to work harder, speak louder, do more. But the field doesn't respond to force. It responds to frequency. You may be asking for abundance, but if your frequency is still dripping in scarcity, the field can't retrieve prosperity. It can only reflect the lack you're anchored in. You may visualize love, but if you vibrate rejection, you'll attract echoes of abandonment. You may affirm your power, but if the core of your identity is still wrapped in doubt, the field will match your self-betrayal. not your mantra. Because in the Akashic system, energy doesn't lie. Your frequency is your access point. Your signature is your password. And that signature is not made of wishes. It's made of consistency. What you feel most often, what you believe most deeply, what you expect without even realizing it. That's the signal. That's the code. That's what the field reflects back to you as reality. And it's why you can change everything, not by force, but by becoming vibrationally honest. This is the turning point most people miss. They try to manifest outcomes from an identity that contradicts those outcomes. They try to climb towards success while vibrating inadequacy. They try to attract new love while identifying with unworthiness. They want a new chapter, but they're reading it through an old lens. And the field? It retrieves whatever identity you're broadcasting, not whatever outcome you're chasing. You are not chasing your reality. You are tuning into it, like a radio signal that becomes clear only when you match its exact frequency. Reality sharpens when your inner state comes into resonance with what you seek. So instead of asking, "What do I want?" start asking, "Who am I being that calls this into form?" Because you're not a bystander in this system. You are the signal the field is using to organize the next frame of your life. If your signature says, "I am safe to be seen," the field reflects visibility. If your signature says, "I always come second," the field mirrors neglect. If your signature says, "I trust life," the field responds with alignment. It is not magic. It is coherence. And coherence is the only language the Akashic Field truly understands. There is a common illusion, deeply embedded in culture, reinforced by systems, and rarely questioned, that says you're what you do, what you've done, or what's been done to you. But the Akashic Field does not recognize your resume. It doesn't see your labels. It doesn't care about how hard you've tried or how many times you've failed. It doesn't read your history through guilt or triumph. It reads only one thing, your frequency, not your performance, not your potential, only the tone of your being. And that tone is determined by what you most often allow yourself to embody. Not perform, but embody. The way you respond to silence. The way you hold yourself in uncertainty. The way you treat yourself when no one is watching. These are not private moments. They are transmissions, and the field is always listening. You're never not broadcasting, even when you're still, even when you're silent. Your field is communicating. Your nervous system is speaking. Your emotional signature is printing itself into the architecture of possibility. So if your current reality feels heavy, foggy, or repetitive, it's not your punishment. It's your pattern made visible. It's your unresolved code, still echoing through the data stream of your life. This is not a call to shame. This is a call to power, because what you created unconsciously, you can recalibrate consciously. You can revise the broadcast. You can shift the tone. You can become the version of you that lives in a different storyline, but not by fixing everything externally, not by achieving more or pleasing louder. You change the field by changing the signal. You shift the outcome by updating the sender. This is the heart of identity work. Not about affirmations, not about changing how others see you, but about changing how your vibration aligns with what the field can access on your behalf. The identity that says, "I am always behind," creates loops of delay. The identity that says, "I am hard to love," filters every connection. The identity that says, "I must prove my worth," builds a life of striving and scarcity. But when you shift your inner story from performance to presence, from protection to coherence, the field automatically begins pulling from different shelves of possibility. Because now, finally, it recognizes you. It sees the new script. It feels the new tone. And the mirrors rearrange themselves accordingly. This is the deeper truth behind all transformation. It is not about becoming someone else. It is about remembering who you were before the forgetting, before fear rewrote your essence, before programming buried your truth. And the moment you realign with that original frequency, clean, undistorted, undiluted, the Akashic Field doesn't hesitate. It updates instantly, because you're not becoming the code. You're the code. And the only thing you've ever needed to do was remember how to transmit clearly. Chapter 3. Timelines and the Quantum Self. Choosing your reality. You're not moving through time. Time is moving through you. What if every moment you've lived, every decision you didn't make, every version of you that could have been still exists? Not metaphorically, energetically, vibrationally. In the quantum architecture of the Akashic Field, time is not linear. It is layered. It is fluid. It is simultaneous. There isn't one you. There are many, not imagined, not fictional, but real, encoded versions of your consciousness playing out on parallel timelines, each one sculpted by a unique vibrational pattern, a different configuration of belief, emotion, and expectation. The confident you, the wealthy you, the isolated you, the version of you that said yes, the version of you that left earlier, the one that never silenced their truth. They're all real. They're all accessible. And which one you experience is not decided by fate. It is chosen by alignment. The Akashic Field doesn't sort timelines through morality or merit. It organizes them by resonance. Every version of you exists at a specific emotional frequency. And as your frequency rises or contracts, you don't just feel better or worse. You jump timelines. You tune into a version of life that reflects the tone you're holding. This is the part most people miss. They try to create the future by effort while emotionally rehearsing their trauma every morning. They journal their dreams while vibrating in lack. They say they're ready for newness, but make every decision from a version of self that's afraid to change. And so the field, in perfect neutrality, retrieves the only timeline it can, the one that matches. This is not punishment. It is precision. You don't need to earn your best life. You need to match it. The field isn't asking you to prove yourself. It's asking you to choose yourself, energetically, emotionally, and vibrationally. And when you do, when your inner tone reaches a certain level of congruence, the shift is immediate. The people around you act differently. Opportunities that felt blocked begin to unfold. Doors you couldn't have forced open begin to swing on their own. Not because something out there has changed, but because you're no longer broadcasting the signal of the timeline you've outgrown. Timeline shifts are not dramatic explosions. They're quiet, subtle, internal. They happen in the moment you no longer identify with your old fear. The second you stop reacting from a wound. The instant you make a new choice, not from force, but from resonance. And suddenly, everything feels different. Not because the world has changed, but because you've synced with a version of the world that already matched your new frequency. That's why it feels effortless. Why it seems like magic. Why synchronicities arrive in waves. Because you didn't force reality to cooperate. You joined a version of reality that was already organized around the tone you now embody. It's a myth that change must be slow, or painful, or earned. The field doesn't delay out of punishment. It delays because it's waiting for coherence. It's waiting for the you who's ready to hold what you're asking for without collapsing back into old emotional habits. You're always one shift away from a completely different version of life. Not a shift in circumstance, a shift in self-image, a shift in emotional baseline, a shift in how honestly you're willing to hold your power instead of outsourcing your worth. Because once you stop arguing for your limitations, once you stop defending the old version of you that couldn't receive, that didn't believe, that had to hustle to survive, You liberate the timeline where ease is not a fantasy, but a default. That's the invitation. To stop seeking change and start becoming it. To stop trying to get there and start vibrating as if you never left. You don't create the quantum version of your life. You remember it. You rehearse it emotionally. You stabilize it vibrationally. And then, without warning, you live it. And you look around at the subtle perfection, the divine symmetry, the softness where tension used to live, and you realize this was never about proving anything. It was about finally becoming compatible with the version of life that had been waiting for you all along. This is not fiction. This is the physics of resonance. This is the structure of reality. And this is how the Akashic Field delivers. Not by force, but by tuning. You're not locked into a single path. You're not bound by your past. You are a multidimensional consciousness with access to infinite variations of your life. But only one will feel right. Only one will hold your breath like truth. Only one will flood your nervous system with peace. And it's the one where you are no longer performing the identity the world handed you. It's the one where you are simply yourself, clearly, courageously, coherently. So when you feel lost, don't chase clarity. Chase alignment, and clarity will find you. The path will rise to meet you. The future will reconfigure itself around you. Because in this system, nothing is waiting to be built. It is all waiting to be tuned to. Chapter 4, Cleaning the Code, Emotional Residue and Field Distortion. Not everything you carry is yours. Some of it is memory. Some of it is programming. Some of it is survival strategy etched so deep into your nervous system that you've mistaken it for identity. But beneath the surface, beneath the affirmations, the intentions, the longing for breakthrough, there's something quieter, denser, often hidden. Residue. The field remembers everything. Not in judgment, not in punishment, but in storage. Every emotion you suppressed, every truth you silenced, every instinct you talked yourself out of. It didn't disappear. It encoded. It settled in your frequency like sediment at the bottom of clear water, distorting the signal, pulling old timelines, repeating familiar patterns. This is why inner work can feel so paradoxical. You think you've moved on. You've shifted your mindset. You've changed your habits. But the same echoes return. Why? Because the code hasn't been cleaned. Because energy, unlike thought, cannot be bypassed. It must be felt, witnessed, processed, or it remains unchanged, active, magnetic. This is what most people misunderstand about healing. It is not intellectual. It is energetic. And until the frequency is cleared, the story still runs, even if only in the background. You may say you've forgiven, but if the memory still contracts your body, the field still reads betrayal. You may affirm abundance, but if you're still bracing for loss, the field still hears scarcity. You may speak of new chapters, but if the vibration of avoidance lingers, the timeline won't shift. Because in this system, only coherence speaks clearly. This is not about reliving pain. It's about releasing its charge. It's about metabolizing what was never processed. It's about honoring the parts of you that were locked in a psychological quarantine, not to punish you, but to protect you until you were safe enough to reclaim them. And now you are. Now you have the emotional capacity to feel what once would have drowned you. Now you have the spiritual architecture to hold what once shattered you. Now you have the conscious awareness to become a clear channel again. Not because you're perfect, but because you're finally present. Cleaning the code is not about fixing what's broken. It's about liberating the parts of you that were frozen. When we speak of cleaning the code, we're not talking about control. We're talking about clearance of old signals, ancient echoes, distorted frequencies that keep pulling you into timelines you've already outgrown. These echoes aren't your enemy. They're your unprocessed self, asking to be seen, heard, and reintegrated, not exiled. You do not heal by deleting the past. You heal by changing your relationship with it, by removing its grip on the present moment. Presence, true presence, is the most advanced technology you have. It is what dissolves residue. It is what quiets distortion. It is what allows stagnant energy to finally move. Because when you sit with your pain without needing to label it, fix it, justify it, or wrap it in a spiritual bow, something holy happens. The field listens, and the signal updates. No ceremony required. No spectacle. Just you breathing through the noise, staying open when every part of your conditioning tells you to shut down. This is how old code unravels. This is how buried emotion unhooks from your field. Not because you performed, but because you finally stopped resisting. When you resist your sadness, it becomes shame. When you resist your anger, it becomes disease. When you resist your grief, it becomes fog in the signal. But when you feel what was never felt, fully, honestly, gently, it loses its charge. It becomes clean data, and the field, in its perfect responsiveness, reorients. Suddenly, patterns break. People show up differently. Decisions become clear, and timelines that once felt locked begin to soften at the edges. Because the field is not testing you, it's mirroring you. And once the emotional residue is cleared, it finally has the space to reflect the truth of who you are now, not who you were when you first coded the distortion. This is what healing really means in the language of the Akasha. Integration, not improvement, not performance, not pretending to be further along, just presence, just reverence, just enough softness to allow the original frequency to return. So if your life still reflects confusion, distortion, or looping patterns, don't chase the reflection. Don't force the mirror. Change the signal. Clear the static. Feel what was frozen, and then watch what happens. Watch how the people around you shift without confrontation. Watch how new timelines become available without hustle. Watch how clarity returns, not as logic, but as remembrance. Because once the code is clean, once the tone is pure, once the signal is undistorted, the field retrieves exactly what was always yours. And you realize, maybe for the first time, you were never waiting for the universe to deliver. The universe was waiting for you to clear the line. Chapter 5, The Dream Interface, Nocturnal Access and Symbolic Memory. There is a doorway that opens each night. Not made of wood or steel, but of silence, of surrender, of space. It appears in the moment the thinking mind softens, when identity loosens its grip, and the conscious ego releases its obsession with control. We call it sleep, but ancient mystics called it something more. Travel, access, retrieval, because when your body rests, your consciousness becomes mobile. It slips beyond the thresholds of time and identity, beyond the coordinates of this incarnation, into the layered terrain of the Akashic dream field, a realm not ruled by logic, but by frequency and memory. Here, you do not hallucinate. You interface. You converse with your field. You review timelines. You receive messages encrypted in emotion and archetype. You remember what your waking mind was never trained to hold. Because dreams are not random. They're coded transmissions from the parts of your consciousness that still know, that still see, that still remember the full map of who you are. Most people ignore their dreams. They wake and forget. Or worse, they reduce the most sacred access point of their soul to nonsense. But your dreams are not nonsense. They are briefings, emotional downloads, blueprints, course corrections, echoes from dimensions that are still active, even as your waking life plays out on a single thread. Your soul uses dreams to bypass the firewall of your ego. Because in waking life, your rational mind filters and edits every intuitive ping. But when you sleep, the filter drops, and the system can finally transfer data. Uninterrupted, unapologetic, unencoded in words, but radiant in symbol, sensation, and soul-level feeling. That is why some dreams stay with you forever. Not because they were strange, but because they were true. They touched a part of your soul that had been waiting patiently, quietly, for reunion. Not metaphorically, energetically. That's why a single dream can bring you to tears. Why a single dream can recalibrate your entire week. Why you can meet someone in a dream and wake up knowing they were real. Because they were. The field does not distinguish between imagination and memory the way we do. It reads vibration and stores it all. The unresolved karma, the forgotten trauma, the inner child you left behind, the parallel self you're still becoming. And when you dream, those frequencies rise. Not to confuse you, to reintegrate you. To work with dreams is to engage with the soul's symbolic language. Your dreams are not puzzles. They are not riddles to solve or decode with intellect. They are frequency transmissions, emotionally encoded symbols that reflect the exact bandwidth your field is operating on during your sleep state. A house in a dream isn't just a house. It's your energetic structure. A staircase isn't just architecture. It's elevation or descent in consciousness. A stranger may be an echo of your shadow, an aspect of your inner child, or even a messenger from another timeline. Dreams speak in archetypes. They mirror your emotional truths, not your logical stories. They highlight what you haven't felt, what you're avoiding, and what is ready to return to the surface for resolution. The field amplifies at night. Why? Because your ego, the gatekeeper of identity, finally goes quiet. And in that stillness, the deeper systems come online. The ones that don't require words. The ones that operate on emotional memory and energetic tone. This is why some dreams feel like visitations. Because they are. You meet ancestors. You revisit other lifetimes. You download scenes from futures not yet lived, but fully possible. This is not imagination. It is access. And when you begin to treat your dreams with the reverence they deserve, by journaling them, sitting with them, feeling into their energy, you begin to recover memory. Not linear memory, but multidimensional data from across your soul's timeline. Sometimes a dream will make no sense to the waking mind. It isn't supposed to. It's not for the mind. It's for the field. It's for the nervous system. It's for the part of you that remembers who you were before you were named. So, when an image repeats in your dreamscape, pay attention. When emotion from a dream lingers for hours after waking, listen. That isn't noise. That is a message delivered in metaphor, and your field is asking you to respond. Ask yourself, what am I rehearsing emotionally in this dream? What energy is unresolved? Who or what am I being asked to reintegrate? Because when you begin to treat dreaming as part of your spiritual technology, when you approach sleep not as a shutdown, but a login, your relationship to nighttime transforms. Sleep becomes sacred, dreams become initiations, and your inner world becomes your most trusted guide. This is not fantasy. This is ancient technology. You are a dreamer not because your mind wanders, but because your field remembers. And every night, it shows you exactly what you're ready to reclaim. Not in thought, but in tone. The question is never, was that dream real? The question is, am I ready to live what it revealed? Because the field is always speaking, and the soul never sleeps. Chapter 6, Reclaiming Suppressed Data, Emotion, Memory, and Integration. There are parts of you you've forgotten on purpose. Not because you're weak, not because you're broken, but because at one moment in your life, feeling fully wasn't safe. So you didn't. You swallowed the scream. You bit back the no. You laughed when you wanted to cry. You stayed silent when every cell in your body wanted to speak. This isn't failure. It's adaptation. It's intelligence. It's what we do when a nervous system prioritizes survival over self-expression. But the Akashic Field forgets nothing. And it does not punish, it remembers. Every unprocessed emotion, every buried truth, every instinct that was denied to protect your place in the tribe. It's all there, not as wounds, but as stored energy, waiting for you to come back for it. And here's the sacred paradox. What you suppress becomes your limitation. But the moment you face it, it becomes your power. Because inside every repressed emotion is energy, raw, magnetic, creative life force. Trapped, looping, waiting for permission to move again. This is the deeper meaning of shadow work. It's not about fixing what's wrong. It's about bringing home the parts of you left behind. The grief you labeled as weakness, the anger you labeled as dangerous, the joy you labeled as inappropriate, the truth you labeled as too much. You were never too much. Your environment was too constrained. Your programming was too scared. Your lineage was too burdened to let you live freely. But you're the one who can break the seal. You're the one who can stop bypassing the body. Stop spiritualizing your way around discomfort. Stop skipping straight to the lesson, and finally let the feeling rise. Because when you do, when you let the feeling move without narrative, without apology, you liberate energy. And the field, it listens, it registers, it updates. Because the vibration you emit once you've reclaimed your fullness is undeniable. You stop attracting people who echo your suppression. You stop choosing from fear. You stop looping in timelines that no longer resonate. You don't need to be more. You need to become whole. And wholeness isn't about light. It's about integration. Integration doesn't happen through theory. It happens through witnessing. When you finally sit with the part of you you've been running from, without fixing, without rushing, without recoiling, that energy begins to shift. Not because you forced it, but because you validated it. Suppressed data doesn't disappear. It becomes static in the field. It distorts your signal. It muddies your retrievals. It creates friction between who you are and who you're becoming. But what if your hesitation isn't confusion? It's grief that's never been grieved. What if your lack of clarity isn't spiritual failure? It's frozen energy asking for warmth. What if your numbness is not disconnection, but protection waiting for you to show up with reverence instead of shame? To reclaim is to return. To return to that inner room where your realest self was hidden for safekeeping. To walk back into the memory, not to relive it, but to rescue the part of you still trapped inside it. To finally say, I see you now. You don't have to carry this alone anymore. And that's what changes everything. Because when emotional truth is fully felt, it doesn't need to keep signaling through chaos. It doesn't need to manipulate your relationships. It doesn't need to sabotage your manifestations. It doesn't need to block your access to clarity. It simply returns into flow. This is the real healing, not transcendence, but return. Not fixing, but fusing. Not avoiding pain, but decoding the power hidden inside it. Every piece of you holds intelligence, even the ones you tried to exile, especially those, because when they come home, you don't just feel lighter. You don't just become clearer. You become magnetic. The Akashic Field responds to this wholeness instantly. It doesn't hesitate. It doesn't test you. It reorganizes itself around the new coherence you're finally embodying. So stop waiting to become someone else. Start returning to the one who never stopped waiting for you. Feel it all. Feel it deeply. And then release it. Not because you've solved it, but because you've honored it. Once the energy is seen, it no longer needs to scream. Once the emotion is owned, It no longer hijacks your timeline. Once the truth is reclaimed, the field no longer mirrors fragmentation. It mirrors freedom. And from that place, real, raw, present, you remember something astonishing. You were never too broken to rise. You were just temporarily disassembled, waiting for the moment you could return to yourself without fear. And that moment is now. Chapter 7, Collective Memory and Cultural Scripts. Before you had a name, before you spoke your first word, before you had a single memory of your own, you inherited thousands, not as stories told, but as frequencies absorbed. You were born into a family, yes, but also into a field, a collective web of memory, trauma, unspoken rules, and emotional inheritance that shaped the very rhythm of your nervous system before you could understand what a belief even was. This is the nature of the Akashic Field. It doesn't store just your individual data. It holds ours, our lineages, our cultural patterns, our ancestral pain, our collective agreements, spoken and unspoken. And unless you learn to discern what is yours from what is inherited, you will spend your life living someone else's emotional code. You will call fear wisdom. You will mistake guilt for virtue. You will wear silence as strength. You will call survival love. This is not your fault. This is the power of imprinting. From the moment you entered this world, you began syncing to the dominant signals around you. You felt your mother's fear. You absorbed your father's silence. You mirrored your culture's unspoken laws about what is safe, acceptable, worthy of love. No one told you to do this. You just did, because belonging felt safer than freedom, because approval felt more urgent than authenticity, because the field around you was louder than the voice within. But now, you are the voice, and that voice gets to choose. This is the great turning, when you begin to recognize that not everything you believe is yours, that not every emotion you carry belongs in your field, that not every script you follow was authored by your soul. This is where deprogramming begins, not by rejecting your roots, but by becoming conscious of which roots are still feeding you, and which ones are strangling your expansion. The Akashic Field holds it all, not just the memory of your personal journey, but the collective frequency of your ancestry, your people, your culture. This is why you can feel grief that isn't tied to a specific event. Why shame can live in your body without a clear source. Why you sabotage joy just when things start flowing. Because sometimes it's not your pain. It's inherited, encoded, passed down silently, like spiritual DNA. Emotional legacies wrapped in loyalty. These aren't beliefs you chose. They're scripts you absorbed. Beliefs like, success must be earned through struggle. Love requires sacrifice. Freedom is selfish. Visibility is dangerous. Intuition is foolish. Truth must stay hidden to protect peace. These weren't taught in books. They were transferred energetically through glances, gestures, suppressed words, and repeated patterns. They became your normal long before you had language to question them. But you can question them now. You must. Because unless brought into consciousness, these scripts do not retire. They repeat through you, and through your children, and through their children. This is how ancestral memory loops itself into the future. But there's a break in the chain now. That break is you. Because the moment you zoom out, the moment you stop confusing inherited fear for personal identity, you gain leverage over the script. You realize, this ends with me. That isn't rebellion. It's sacred responsibility. Because when you reclaim your frequency, you don't just heal your life. You shift the field. One person in alignment is more powerful than generations of unconscious repetition. One human soul who decides not to pass down the pain they inherited, who refuses to wear the mask that protected their parents, who stops bending their truth to fit a legacy of silence, creates a ripple that echoes in both directions, backward through lineage and forward through every timeline to come. This is how karma is rewritten, not through force, but through frequency. You don't need to heal the world. You just need to stop carrying what was never meant to be yours. This is the work of the lineage breaker, not to fight the past, but to stop living it as if it were the present, not to dishonor your bloodline, but to cleanse it, to finally embody what no one else in your line had the safety, clarity, or freedom to claim. And the moment you do, the field notices. It recalibrates. It stops pulling timelines soaked in survival and begins retrieving ones aligned with sovereignty. Because the collective field is powerful, but individual coherence is sovereign. And the future is not created by the loudest noise of the past. It is authored by the clearest signal of the present. That signal is you. Chapter 8, Becoming the Scribe. Authorship, alignment, and energetic command. There comes a moment on the path, not loud, not dramatic, but unmistakable, when you stop asking how reality works and start writing it. Up until now, you've remembered, you've reclaimed, you've recalibrated, but now something shifts. You realize you're not just an observer of the field, not merely a participant, not a passive receiver. You are the scribe. You are the one who enters new data into the Akashic system through presence, through emotion, through embodied belief. This is the power we were never taught. That reality isn't just something we navigate. It's something we narrate. The field listens not to your performance, not to your repetition, not to your affirmations spoken through clenched teeth. It listens to your coherence, to the moment your inner world becomes stable enough, aligned enough, true enough, that the frequency you emit is no longer a request. It is a command, not a command from force, a command from clarity, a command the field recognizes as non-negotiable because it is emotionally congruent. Every time you move in alignment with your essence, you're writing. Every decision you make from integrity, you're imprinting. Every moment you refuse to betray your soul for approval, you're broadcasting a signal the field cannot ignore. This is not magic. This is energetic authorship. This is what it means to live like a scribe. It means your life is your manuscript. Your choices are your ink. Your vibration is your language. You don't have to be loud to be heard. You just have to be real. To be the scribe is to live with deliberate resonance. This isn't about controlling every detail of your life. It's about aligning so clearly with your truth that the field begins to organize around your frequency. Not because you forced it, but because you tuned into it. In the Akashic system, clarity is louder than effort. Conviction is louder than hustle. Resonance is the only language the field speaks fluently. So what does it mean, practically, to author your reality? It means you stop waiting. You stop looking outside for permission. You stop narrating your life from wounds you've already outgrown. You speak from the version of you that already exists within the field, the one who has already lived the outcome you're now aligning with. You match that tone. You hold that signal, and then you release. Because authorship isn't grasping. It's declaring. It's holding the energy of "this is who I am now," with enough consistency that the field begins retrieving data that fits that identity. When the belief, the emotion, and the nervous system are humming the same tune, you're writing new access points into your field. You stop saying, "I want," and start living "I am." That's when the timelines shift. That's when synchronicity starts moving faster than thought. That's when the people, places, and opportunities that match your frequency appear. Not because you hunted them down, but because they were always trying to reach you. You were just on the wrong station. Every thought is a spark. Every decision is a keystroke. Every emotion you feel fully becomes a code the field records and responds to. The Akashic Field does not need you to be perfect. It needs you to be coherent. It needs you to stop hiding the truth of what you know. Stop distorting your signal to fit someone else's comfort. Stop pretending not to be the one writing this story. You are. You always were. This is not spiritual fantasy. This is energetic mechanics. Reality shifts at the speed of identity calibration, and the field rewrites itself to match the tone you're finally stable enough to hold. So hold it, not because you're trying to prove anything, but because you remember now who you are. You are not here to repeat the code. You are here to author it. And when your emotional alignment becomes your new standard, the universe doesn't just respond. It evolves with you. Chapter 9, Living as the Interface, Presence, Translation, and Co-Creation. There comes a moment, not dramatic, not thunderous, but quiet and crystalline, when a knowing drops in like breath into stillness. You're not a body in the field. You're not even a soul accessing the field. You're the interface, the living, breathing portal between the invisible and the visible, the quantum and the physical, the vibration and the form. You're not just affected by life. You're translating it constantly. Every thought you hold, every emotion you feel, every action you take is not just movement through reality. It is instruction to the field. You're not waiting on life. Life is waiting on you to remember, to become aware, to stop reacting as if you're a character, and begin operating like the conduit you've always been. The Akashic Field doesn't just respond to you as a wishful being. It flows through you as a coherent interface. When your system is scattered, your signal is scrambled. But when your presence is grounded, when your emotion is embodied, when your thoughts are clear, the signal becomes undeniable. This is what those who move with ease understand. They are not chasing life. They are modulating it. They don't wonder whether the field hears them. They know they are the field expressing itself in human shape. To live as the interface is to dissolve the illusion of separation. You're not disconnected from source. You are streaming it. Right now, through every breath, through every feeling, through every subtle signal your nervous system emits. You're the user console of the field. Every time you choose presence over panic, intention over impulse, alignment over approval, you are translating invisible information into tangible form. You speak, and the field listens. You feel, and the field adapts. You believe, and the quantum architecture of your reality begins to reweave itself to match that vibration. This is not metaphysical metaphor. It is literal, energetic mechanics. The clearer your inner frequency, the cleaner your interface. The more congruent your inner world, the more precise the feedback. This is why some people walk through the world with what looks like effortless luck, but is really deep, embodied coherence. Their internal software is clean. Their output is intentional. Their signal is trusted by the field because it is consistent. To live this way doesn't require perfection. It requires presence. It asks, will you stay conscious of the signals you're sending? Will you take responsibility for the energy you transmit, even in silence? Will you hold yourself with enough reverence to stop outsourcing your creative power? Because once you embody this, you stop looking for signs. You become the sign. You stop asking for confirmation. Your clarity becomes confirmation everywhere you go. You stop wondering whether the field is responding. You walk like someone who knows it already has. This isn't arrogance. It's alignment. It's what happens when you stop pretending to be separate from the source you were designed to express. You are not a student of the field. You are its voice. You are not reacting to the system. You are co-authoring with it, breath by breath, thought by thought, tone by tone. The more honest you are, the faster the field responds. The more present you are, the more precise your co-creation. Because you're not just here to live in the world. You are here to conduct it. This is what it means to live as the interface. To walk into knowing that you are the signal, the receiver, the transmitter, and the translation, all at once. From this place, creation is not effort. It is flow. You don't fight for the timeline. You tune into it. And the moment you do, reality begins to reorganize around your resonance. You're not waiting for access. You're living from it. Chapter 10, Access Without Effort. Coherence, permission, and the return to ease. We were taught that what is worthwhile must be earned. That reward follows labor. That spiritual access, healing, success, even love, must be worked for. We were taught that the universe respects hustle. That results come from pressure. That manifestation is about chasing, proving, striving. But none of this is true in the language of the field, because the Akashic system is not mechanical. It is vibrational, and in a vibrational system, alignment always overrides effort. Every time. This is why you've seen it. People who move through life with grace and flow. People who think it, feel it, and it appears. Not because they're lucky, not because they're special, but because they are tuned. They're not pushing outcomes into existence. They are resonating with realities that already exist and letting the field match their coherence. To access without effort is not to bypass reality. It is to partner with it. To understand that when your nervous system is no longer in conflict with your desire, the field doesn't resist you. It reflects you. Effort says, I must chase. Alignment says, it is already here. And the field listens to whichever tone is louder. This doesn't mean you don't take action. It means your actions are born of congruence, not compensation. You're no longer trying to earn what you already embody. And that changes everything. To live in alignment is to allow what's already yours to arrive. Without force, without strain, without contradiction. But most people never experience this. Not because ease isn't available, but because they've been conditioned to mistrust it. They've learned to equate effort with worth, struggle with nobility, and suffering with depth. So when grace shows up, when things begin to flow, they tense, they sabotage, they look for what's wrong, they scan for reasons they don't deserve it. This isn't laziness, it's conditioning, and it creates a vibrational split. You say, I want it, but your field says, I'm not ready. You say, I trust, but your nervous system is still in alert mode, waiting for the other shoe to drop. This is why manifestation often fails. Not because your desires are wrong, but because your signal is scrambled. The Akashic Field doesn't respond to your affirmations. It responds to your embodiment. It doesn't care how hard you try. It reflects how clearly you match. And clarity is not loud. It's not dramatic. It's not desperate. It's stable. It's the quiet, steady tone of a system that's no longer arguing with itself. To reach this level of access, you don't need more pressure. You need more permission. Permission to stop proving. Permission to let it be simple. Permission to release the identities built around struggle and finally let ease be safe. This isn't about bypassing life's depth. It's about making space for the truth that ease is not the absence of power. Ease is power when it flows from inner harmony. When you stop resisting your own signal, when you stop trying to manipulate the external, and instead align internally with the state of already having, the field doesn't hesitate. It delivers, not as reward, as reflection, and what shows up feels less like a miracle and more like inevitability. Not, wow, I can't believe this happened. But of course it happened. I've been living in this frequency for weeks. This is access without effort. Not passive, not idle, but vibrationally intelligent. You stop moving from fear. You start living from coherence. And that's when reality begins to respond at the speed of you. Chapter 11. The field remembers, returning to your original signal. Long before you were conditioned, long before you learned to shrink, contort, perform, or protect, you had a signal. Clear, unedited, unfiltered, unshaken. It wasn't forged through achievement. It wasn't crafted through belief. It was you, pure, resonant, and encoded with the full potential of your soul's expression in this lifetime. The Akashic Field remembers it. Because the field doesn't just store data. It stores design. It holds the vibrational fingerprint of who you came here to be. Beneath the programming, beneath the roles, beneath the coping strategies that became your identity. Even when you forgot, even when you abandoned yourself for approval, even when you stopped believing in anything unseen, the field did not forget. It waited, patient, unbiased, unmoved by your doubts. Because the original signal is not lost. It is only buried. And the moment you choose to peel back the noise, not through force, but through presence, the field begins syncing with your essence again. This is the great return, not to a past self, but to the unconditioned self, the one that was never broken, never fragmented, only layered beneath what the world taught you to become. To return to your original signal is not about remembering a moment in time. It's about reclaiming a state of being that has always existed beneath the surface noise. You do not excavate it with force. You reveal it with presence. The field doesn't demand you be flawless. It only asks for truth, because your unfiltered truth vibrates at the same frequency as your original code. And once you begin to align with that code again, you'll notice the shift. The ache of dissonance fades. Synchronicity returns. What once felt far suddenly feels near. You stop chasing life and start translating it from a place of deep inner congruence. You don't need to remember every trauma to heal. You only need to restore signal clarity. The field doesn't retrieve what you wish for. It retrieves what your system permits. So if your system is still filled with distortions, old stories, inherited fears, suppressed emotions, it will continue to pull timelines that match that frequency, even if you affirm something different. But when you feel safe enough to drop the mask, to stop performing for outcomes, to hold the emotion without judgment, your signal begins to sharpen. And that sharpness becomes a beacon, because the field is not passive. It is actively listening for coherence. It is scanning your system not for what you want, but for who you are consistently being. When your vibration says, "I've come home to myself," life responds in kind. You attract people who see the real you because you are no longer hiding. You pull timelines of stability because your nervous system is no longer bracing for collapse. You interface with abundance, love, clarity, not as something you earn, but as something you remembered you already were. And the most sacred revelation? Your original signal is not only the source of your alignment, it is the blueprint for your impact. When you live from it, you become a transmitter of resonance, a ripple maker in the collective field, a reminder to others of what it feels like to be whole again. This is the quiet power of the field. It never holds your distortions against you. It simply waits for you to remember what it's always known. You are never forgotten. You are never broken. You are never off course. You are always streaming, always connected, always just one shift away from coming back into full alignment with who you truly are. Chapter 12, The Silence That Speaks. Listening to the Akashic Field in stillness. Not all truth arrives with thunder. Some truths only reveal themselves in stillness, in the space between thoughts, in the soft terrain of your inner quiet. The Akashic Field speaks constantly, but rarely in the language of the intellect. Its voice is vibration, symbol, sensation. It doesn't argue. It doesn't repeat. It waits for silence deep enough to receive it. This is where most people miss the field wisdom. They listen with their minds, but the field speaks to nervous systems. It speaks through texture, temperature, timing, through dreams, intuition, the sudden arrival of clarity without cause. You do not force this wisdom. You surrender to it, because in a system built on resonance, the deepest intelligence emerges not through action, but through attunement. In silence, your internal resistance dissolves. In silence, you hear the echoes that words cannot hold. In silence, the truth you've been chasing finally catches up to you, not as noise, but as recognition. You remember that the field doesn't need volume. It needs permission. And when the mental clutter settles, when the habitual grasping pauses, what rises is not emptiness, but signal. And that signal knows your name. In the stillness, something ancient stirs. It isn't dramatic. It doesn't demand. It emerges quietly, like a memory you never made, but somehow always knew. This is the Akashic Field's most intimate language. The symbolic, the intuitive, the dream state. Not because these are mysterious, but because they exist just beyond the limits of your waking logic. When you sleep, your ego releases the wheel. The firewall between your conscious and unconscious mind lowers. And the field, precise, timeless, non-linear, begins to speak. Not in facts, but in metaphor. Not in speech, but in resonance. A staircase is not just a staircase. A stranger is not just a stranger. A house is not just a house. They are blueprints, emotionally encoded glyphs that reflect your current access point. Dreams are not psychological leftovers. They're briefings. And the more you honor them, write them down, reflect on them, listen without trying to solve, the more clearly they begin to mirror your evolution. This is dream work, not decoding, but communing, not interpreting like a puzzle, but feeling into the frequency of what has been shown. Ask, what part of me is trying to speak? What unresolved truth is rising? What am I now ready to retrieve? When you treat dreams as sacred, the field responds with clarity. But the silence that speaks doesn't only visit you at night. It lives in presence, in meditation, in those brief gaps where your thoughts quiet and your system exhales. In those moments when you're not chasing, not performing, not narrating, your field opens and data begins to download. Not loud, not obvious, but true. You suddenly know something you didn't know a moment before. You feel a shift that has no origin but is undeniable. You remember who you are in ways that no book or teacher could have taught you, because you already knew, and silence made it safe to remember. This is the paradox. The deepest transmissions require the least effort, not because they are weak, but because they are too refined for noise. And once you've tasted this level of communication with the field, you no longer beg for answers. You learn to listen. You understand that presence is the portal. That clarity doesn't come from asking harder, but from trusting deeper. You don't need to force access. You only need to become still enough to receive what's already echoing through your own system. And from that space, you begin to live not as someone seeking meaning, but as someone who has become the listener of their own soul. Chapter 13, Reclaiming Suppressed Data. Integration as Power. There are parts of you you've never spoken aloud, not because you lack the words, but because at some point, it didn't feel safe to feel them, let alone own them. Moments when the emotion rose. Grief, rage, instinct, knowing, and you swallowed it down for survival. And in that moment, something else happened. That unspoken emotion didn't disappear. It became data, compressed, encrypted, sealed in your energetic system. This is what the Akashic Field holds for you. Not just memory, not just identity, but the full archive of everything you have ever suppressed. Not to punish, not to haunt, but to wait until you are ready to reclaim it. Because what you suppress doesn't vanish. It mutates. Grief becomes hesitation. Anger becomes compliance. Joy becomes guilt. And your signal, the energetic tone you transmit, grows distorted. This is why you can shift your mindset and still feel stuck. This is why affirmations fail. Why your actions contradict your desires. Why things that should work don't. It's not because you're broken. It's because your field is cluttered. And the field, in its perfect neutrality, retrieves according to the vibration it receives. So long as your system carries unresolved emotion, the Akashic mechanism pulls from timelines that match that residue, not your intentions. The only way to shift the program is to reclaim the data. To reclaim suppressed data is not to revisit trauma for the sake of suffering. It is to liberate energy frozen in time. Because every unresolved moment, every silenced emotion, is a closed loop still running in the background of your field, consuming bandwidth, distorting your signal, limiting your access. The field does not forget, but also does not judge. It holds your grief with the same neutrality as your joy. It stores your pain without labeling it failure. It simply waits for you to become still enough, brave enough, honest enough to feel what was never fully felt. This is the true work. Not bypassing, not reframing, not convincing yourself you're over it, but sitting with it, letting the body tremble, letting the heart race, letting the memory rise without immediately shutting it down or needing to narrate it away. Not because the pain defines you, but because the charge must be released. For the energy to reintegrate, you don't need to fix it. You need to feel it. You need to allow it to move. Through presence, not performance. Presence transmutes. Pretending prolongs. And as you allow the frozen code to thaw, your signal begins to clear. Clarity returns not because you've done something dramatic, but because you've removed the distortion that was blocking the data flow. Suddenly, your intuition sharpens. Your boundaries solidify. Your choices align. Your timelines shift. Not because the field has changed, but because you have updated your access point. You're no longer navigating reality from avoidance, but from integration, from wholeness, from truth. And perhaps most powerfully of all, you stop fearing the parts of yourself you once buried. You see them not as liabilities, but as dormant power, waiting not for healing, but for inclusion. Wholeness was never perfection. It was always integration. And as you reclaim what you once suppressed, you step into a coherence so rare, so magnetic, so energetically clean, that the field has no choice but to match it. You're no longer just aligned. You're available, fully, and from that availability, a new kind of reality begins to download, one that was never out of reach, only out of resonance. Chapter 14, Collective Memory and Cultural Scripts, Breaking the Inherited Loop. You were born into more than a body. You were born into a field, a complex, dense lattice of ancestral memory, cultural expectations, and emotional coding, stretching back generations, woven through invisible contracts and unspoken rules. Before you spoke your first word, you were syncing to a frequency that didn't belong solely to you. You absorbed it through breath, through tone, through emotional osmosis. Your mother's anxiety, your father's silence, your society's myths about love, power, worth, and limitation. The Akashic Field doesn't only store your personal data. It stores our collective imprint, a multidimensional library of beliefs and patterns that shape the emotional landscape of entire lineages and cultures. This isn't metaphor. It's physics. Every belief you carry emits a frequency. And frequencies are not just personal, they are inherited. You feel guilt not because of something you did, but because someone in your lineage was punished for joy. You hesitate to shine, not because you're unsure, but because your culture warned you that visibility invites danger. These are not conscious choices. They're scripts passed down, practiced, normalized. And unless you question them, you will unconsciously perform them for the rest of your life. But here's the truth. What is inherited is not permanent. The code may live in your field, but you're the editor. To rewrite inherited code, you don't need to know every ancestor by name. You only need to become conscious of what your field is still carrying. Start here. What patterns repeat no matter how much you work on yourself? What fears show up when you begin to rise? What emotions feel too big to belong only to you? These are your entry points. These are not just personal echoes. They are generational frequencies embedded in your system like background code. But the moment you become aware that they are not yours, you regain sovereignty. You realize that much of what you called identity was actually a performance of inherited survival scripts. And that survival is not the same as truth. You are not here to repeat your bloodline. You are here to liberate it. And that liberation doesn't come through blame. It comes through reclamation. When you say, "No more," it ends here. The field listens. You're not just healing for yourself. You're interrupting karmic repetition. You are becoming an access point for new possibilities that no one before you had the safety or awareness to claim. One person in full alignment, who refuses to carry inherited shame, who questions cultural obligation, who embodies love not as sacrifice but as sovereignty, shifts the trajectory of generations. And the field adjusts in real time, because you're not just living for today. You are actively reprogramming collective memory. This is not a metaphor. It's how frequency works. Every time you act from truth instead of fear, you break the loop. Every time you name what was once unspeakable, you cleanse the residue. Every time you choose differently, you write a new code, one that ripples backward and forward through time, healing what was and unlocking what could be. You're not just one person. You are a living edit point in the evolutionary script of your lineage and your culture. You're not here to perform the old story. You are here to end it and offer the new one. And that begins not with noise, but with the simple, powerful act of becoming aware. Because awareness breaks the spell. And in that moment of lucid presence, you stop being a carrier of the past and become the scribe of what's never been done before. Chapter 15, Becoming the Scribe. Authorship in the Akashic Field. There's a moment after the noise quiets, after the trauma is named, after the old programs are seen for what they are, when something sacred begins to emerge. A deeper truth. You were never just an observer. You were never just a healer or a survivor or a pattern breaker. You are the scribe. The Akashic Field does not simply record the events of your life. It mirrors your authorship. It responds to conscious input. It rearranges itself when your signal becomes intentional. This is where vibration becomes language. When you declare, "This is who I am now," not with wishful thinking, but with energetic congruence, the field accepts the update. It doesn't respond to temporary emotion. It responds to coherence. When thought, emotion, belief, and action vibrate in unity, that's when your words stop being noise and become code. And this is where most people misunderstand manifestation. It's not about scripting with your voice. It's about scripting with your state. You can affirm wealth 1,000 times. But if your nervous system still clings to scarcity, the field receives that as your true frequency. Because the field doesn't listen to what you say once. It listens to what you live. Your life is not just happening to you. You are writing it, line by line, belief by belief, frequency by frequency. The Akashic Field is not a passive archive. It is a responsive interface. It doesn't just remember what you did. It encodes how you did it. With what emotion? With what intention? With what resonance? Every decision made from alignment, no matter how small, becomes an anchor point. Every moment you choose presence over performance, authenticity over safety, trust over control. You are imprinting the field with a new blueprint, and the field adjusts. It updates its retrieval logic. It begins to pull opportunities, relationships, and pathways that mirror your inner architecture. Not because you forced it, but because your signal left no room for contradiction. This is authorship. To be the scribe of your reality is to live with such vibrational precision, such emotional integrity, that the unseen world can only reflect what you've already become. Not what you're trying to be, not what you're convincing yourself to feel, but what your entire system is broadcasting as truth. This is not performance. It's power. It's what happens when you no longer need proof to believe. When your belief itself becomes the cause. When your nervous system is no longer negotiating with fear. When your identity no longer contradicts your desire. That is the moment creation becomes effortless. Not because nothing is required, but because nothing is resisting. The universe is not waiting for you to prove yourself. It's waiting for you to remember that you are not separate from a source. You are its extension, its translator, its pen in motion, and the words you write with your energy become the stories you live. So speak through alignment, choose through clarity, act through love, not lack, and watch as the field etches a new reality around you with the elegance of a sacred mirror. This is how timelines bend. This is how futures are authored, not through force, but through frequency made deliberate. Chapter 16, Living as the Interface, Translating Energy into Experience. There comes a moment, quiet but irreversible, when you no longer seek connection to the field as something outside of you. You begin to feel with visceral certainty that the field is within you. And more than that, you are its interface. Not its student, not its follower, its expression. You are the bridge between frequency and form, between unseen data and tangible outcome. Every breath you take is a transmission. Every emotion you feel is an input. Every choice you make is a keystroke on the living keyboard of the cosmos. You are not separate from the system. You are how the system responds to itself. And the quality of your experience is not a reflection of what you deserve. It is a reflection of what your frequency is generating in real time. Most people walk through the world believing they are reacting to life. But the truth is more radical. They are modulating it with every inner movement, shaping timelines, shifting dynamics, adjusting futures, through the invisible interface of their presence. The field is not slow. It is instant. It is not selective. It is precise. It responds not to your desires, but to your baseline vibration, not to your effort, but to your coherence. To live as the interface is not to attain perfection. It is to walk with unshakable awareness that your every movement, emotional, mental, energetic, is a conversation with the field. You're not waiting for signs. You are the sign. You are not asking for confirmation. Your clarity creates it. You no longer wonder if the universe is listening, because you have become the language it responds to. This isn't mystical ego. It's quantum intelligence. You understand now that you're not reacting to reality. You are generating it, moment by moment, choice by choice, vibration by vibration. Every decision to stay present when fear tempts you into retreat sharpens the signal. Every breath taken with full embodiment of your truth sends a ripple through the lattice of timelines. Every time you feel your emotion without judgment, you update the data stream with higher integrity. You're no longer navigating the world from the outside in. You are streaming the source code through your system, and the field is organizing itself around you accordingly. This is why those who live from deep awareness appear to move through life with ease, grace, synchronicity. It's not luck. It's not coincidence. It's resonance. They've stopped looking for alignment and started being the alignment. They're not chasing opportunities. They're broadcasting a signal so coherent that life must rearrange to meet it. And this is the essence of being the interface. Not to control, but to collaborate. Not to demand, but to align. It is to hold the sacred knowing that your very state is what shapes your fate, that you are not on the outside, trying to get in. You are the living portal through which new futures unfold. And when you live from that truth, when you walk as a clear, consistent, conscious interface, reality bends not to your will, but to your willingness to embody who you truly are. No more striving, no more waiting, no more hoping the field responds, because now you know it already has. Chapter 17, Access Without Effort, the Physics of Receiving. We were taught to strive, to hustle, to grind. We were told that anything worth having must be earned through pressure, persistence, and pain. That success is the reward for suffering, that the universe honors effort like currency. But the field doesn't operate on those terms. The Akashic Field does not respond to effort. It responds to resonance. It is not mechanical, it is vibrational. And in a vibrational universe, alignment always outranks exertion. Every single time. This is why some people seem to manifest with ease. They hold a clear, stable internal frequency, and the external world rearranges itself to meet it. They don't chase, they tune, because once you match the frequency of a reality, you don't have to reach for it. It becomes the only logical retrieval. This is access without effort, not laziness, not avoidance, but vibrational intelligence. Effort says, I must make this happen. Alignment says, I already match it, so it must arrive. The field doesn't need your sweat. It needs your stability. It needs a clear signal, unclouded by doubt, scarcity, or contradiction. You can't out-hustle a confused nervous system. You can't outperform a belief that you're not worthy. The field hears what you actually believe, not what you say, not what you journal, what your energy confirms consistently. To live in a state of coherent resonance is to stop negotiating with the universe through labor and start transmitting truth through embodiment. You no longer attempt to prove your worth. You begin to inhabit it. You no longer cling to affirmations that contradict your nervous system's felt reality. You pause. You regulate. You reprogram the frequency beneath the thought. That's the access key. Clarity is more potent than control. Presence is more magnetic than performance. The field is not keeping score of how hard you try. It is constantly, neutrally, precisely retrieving what matches your most stable, energetic tone. And that tone, your signature, is shaped by what you expect, what you believe is familiar, and what you feel safe receiving. Which means this: if you want to receive without effort, you must become someone who no longer holds fear around receiving. Let that land. It's not about having all the right thoughts. It's about no longer having resistance to the good you claim to desire. It's about clearing the residue of lack, guilt, and unworthiness, so your system no longer distorts what's meant for you. When your desire no longer activates fear, when your expansion no longer feels dangerous, when your identity no longer rejects the very abundance you seek, you stop blocking the signal, and the field responds quickly, effortlessly, Precisely. Because now, you're no longer requesting something foreign. You're retrieving what already belongs to the version of you you've become. This is not magic. This is physics. So don't ask if you're doing enough. Ask if you're clear. Ask if you're safe in your own expansion. Ask if your nervous system and your desire are in agreement. Because when they are, you stop trying to manifest outcomes. You begin to inhabit them before they arrive. And from that place of still certainty, they have no choice but to appear. Chapter 18. The field remembers, returning to the original signal. Even in your darkest hours, when doubt thundered louder than truth, when silence felt like abandonment, when your worth seemed buried under layers of survival, the field never forgot you. While you questioned your place, it remembered your original signal. While you tried to earn what was always yours, it patiently held the blueprint of your wholeness. While you spiraled through noise, it held the memory of your clarity. Before fear spoke, before wounds spoke louder than wisdom, the Akashic Field stores more than data. It stores potential. Every version of you still alive, just beyond your current bandwidth. Every timeline that awaits not your effort, but your permission. Not your striving, but your alignment. This is not just a remembrance of possibility. It is a return to source frequency. You came here encoded, not empty, but luminous. Not lost, but temporarily layered in distortion. And now, having journeyed through forgetting, through clearing, through rewriting, you are ready to remember. Not as a concept, as a felt reality. The original signal, the one beneath all masks, roles, and programming, is not something you create. It is something you reclaim. You are not a visitor in this reality. You are not an accident of biology or a footnote in someone else's story. You are a living access point, a walking interface designed to translate energy into experience, emotion into embodiment, frequency into form. And now, with the noise quieted, with the residue cleared, with the code rewritten, you return to the knowing that was never truly lost. You are the signal. You are the author. You are the system through which the field expresses itself. All the loops you've endured were not punishments, but echoes calling you back into coherence. All the delays were not detours, but alignments, preparing the soil of your soul for deeper reception. And now, as you sit in this stillness, as the frequency stabilizes, as your nervous system aligns with your soul's intelligence, you no longer search for the field. You speak from it. You walk as it. You no longer wonder if you're being heard. You know that everything you are is already reverberating through the quantum layers. This is mastery, not control, but collaboration. Not striving, but streaming. You don't need more. You need to recognize what you've always had. The ability to remember, realign, and reauthor your world from the inside out. The field has been waiting, not with impatience, but with precision. Waiting for you to say yes to the timeline that was always yours. Waiting for you to embody the version of yourself who no longer doubts the power of her presence. Now you return, not just awakened, but reintegrated. Not just aware, but available. To receive, to reflect, to radiate, to write again. But this time from truth. And if you enjoyed this content, comment below where you're from, share it with someone you love, and subscribe to the channel. Every day, we bring new videos to feed the soul.